Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Hotsport. Look, we've had some cup games, recently, to take over our weekends and our midweeks. So, we're now back to the nitty-gritty of the Premier League. So, guys, strap yourself in, get yourself some coffee or some tea or whatever, is your poison, and get ready for the show. Make sure you're hitting the like button and you're subscribing. It's time for Anton's Tears. Last night, the committee of 4 men and 1 deeply ungrateful dog gathered once again under strict dress code enforcement. Every committee member was required to show up wearing the Victor Gyökeres jerseys they bought in the summer. The very same ones they've been quietly trying to sell online for the last few months. No refunds, no excuses. And just to really drive the point home, I made them sit there and watch Gyökeres' goal and assist against Chelsea over and over and over again. By the 10th replay, acceptance set in. By the 15th, the dog was nodding in approval. With pride swallowed, agendas exposed, and opinions rewritten in real time, we toiled and burned the midnight oil to put together this week's definitive list. So without further ado, it's time for Anton's Tears. All right, guys, so should we just get right into it? Guys, again, make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you are subscribing. It's been a while since I've done some tears. Having them come in a few days apart, and now we had like a week, 2 weeks break. So they're back now with you on your screen. And as we all know, eliminated from the tiers, Wolves. I mean, back to their old ways. I mean, Everton got sent down to 9 men. It was like a freaking gift for Wolves, and yet they still couldn't get more than a point away at Everton. But I gotta say, the points for Wolves, we're watching, we're on Derby County watch, slowly adding up. They now have 7 points. That is more points. That's like more than double, actually one more point that at one point, I think at halfway point, they were projecting to have all season. I think they had three points at the halfway stage. Now they're on 7. So, they're about 4 from equaling Derby, 5 from surpassing them. At this rate now, it seems like they may not be the worst Premier League team, but they still ain't making it. They ain't going to be in the league next year, guys. Sorry. Next up, let's start from the bottom. Consider this a warning, and this for the Claret and Blue clubs down here, Burnley and West Ham. It's time for you to turn this ships around, guys. Otherwise, you're going down. Like, West Ham at home against another relegation team, that's a game you have to win if you're going to stay up in this league. A side that fired your manager earlier this season. By the way, he's the first of 3 managers that they've had this year, and the third one seems to be under the microscope now. You couldn't, like, with all the pressure put on Nuno Espirito Santo, you could not allow Forest to be the ones to put the dagger in Nuno. Now, so far, so good for Nuno. They haven't pulled any triggers, and maybe they've caught some sense. Maybe David Sullivan has found himself some sense. However, the performances have been dreadful. Whether it's Potter or Nuno, they've just been bad this season. They've never been able to really turn a corner. There were times when they found a little bit of form. They've had some good moments this season, but for me, They look locked in on going down. The behavior is that of a team that's going down. Now, the situation is now even more dire, right? Because they lost to Forest. Like, that was a 6-pointer. Had they beaten Forest, they would be 1 point behind them. But because they lost, they are now 7 points behind. That was a huge... And at the moment, it's going to take a big effort, a really hot run from West Ham to try to get themselves safe. Now, a lot of these teams do manage to do it. They make the games tougher the more desperate they get. I think it's time for them to hit that mode now from match week 22 onwards if I was West Ham, because I'm telling you right now, for both of these teams, I say consider this a warning. I'm considering eliminating both of you guys from the tiers. Now, Burnley is an interesting one, right? Burnley overall have been bad. 13 points throughout the whole season. They too are 8 points, inside the drop zone. But then, you wrestle a 2-2 with a Man United team. Now imagine, of course, a Man United team that's, got their issues. The manager out, Darren Fletcher was at the wheel, 2-0, not 2-0 down. They were 2-1 down. They come back, they show some character. Anthony with the equalizing goal, and they're able to hold on for a point. I think that's a valuable point at home against a team like Manchester United. But overall, for me, the form has not been good enough. They are 8 points, again, adrift of safety, and they got to go to Anfield this weekend. Like, honestly, let's see. Let's see how these games unfold. I might be tempted to pull the trigger on one of these two teams going down. West Ham, by the way, also not an easy fixture, having to go away to Spurs, but a Spurs team that's been struggling overall. So, interesting, very tough test for both of these two teams. But let's say both of these lose the teams. Now, luckily for them, Nottingham Forest play Arsenal. So, that for me is the equalizer. If somehow Arsenal do the unthinkable and drop points to Forest, and both these two teams get battered at home or battered away from home against big clubs, I might have to consider pulling the trigger on either one or both of these sides to go into the elimination, which, by the way, would be way less fun for me, because I don't want to play all my elimination cards already with 16 games to go, but that's just the way it's been shaping up for these three teams that are on the screen right now. Okay, let's start talking about some little bit of better teams. Out of the woods yet, Nottingham Forest? Well, 7 points clear of the drop right now, but they do have, to go and play Arsenal, and that's going to be a tough game. Flip it on the other way, right? By the way, I'll flip it on the West Ham side. Big ups to Forest for winning one of the games that they absolutely needed to win to put themselves in a position to stay in this league. Because at one point it was looking dicey. And for them to go away from home to play against a manager who, by the way, definitely had reasons to, motivation to try to beat them beyond just trying to stay safe. Good come from behind victory from Forest on a Friday night. We've talked about, I think, on the last tiers, about it, slightly, but now we can put it into play. I think that was crucial, and that separates them with the Burnleys and the West Hams. They are, for me, a Premier League standard. They're a team that looks like a Premier League side, should stay in this league, could easily, have a better season next year. So props to them. But I'll flip the other scenario on its head, though. They do play Arsenal. That is at home. I'm not saying, by the way, it's going to be an easy game for the Gunners, right? For me, in the back of my head, I know that it's not going to be an easy game for us. But I still expect us to win. But should Arsenal win, but should there be some craziness where Burnley and West Ham get results at Liverpool and Tottenham, big up those sides for doing so, now we have a conversation. Now the relegation fight is looking really saucy. But do I believe that's going to happen? I do think we might be staying status quo, but I do think overall that Forest do look like a side now that deserve to stay in this league. So I do think there's a bit of a difference between Nottingham Forest versus a Burnley or a West Ham. Next up, it's a tough league. And what I mean by that is by You know, you play a Crystal Palace, you play an Everton, you play a Leeds, and you know, by the way, they're 3 tiers from the bottom. Those are still tough games, especially away from home. You know, for anybody. You know, we've got Leeds, I believe, on the 1st of Feb or the 31st of January, whatever it is in England, just kind of on that border. I'm not looking at that as an easy win. I was talking about Forest. I'm not looking at that as an easy win either. When we went to Everton, we went out 1-0. We play, you know, Crystal Palace on the last game of the season. If we need to go to Selhurst to pick up a result, I'm going to be butterflies considering, you know, what the prize would be. So these are all teams that, yeah, like, this is one thing that I feel like I need to clarify as a content creator, and maybe sometimes I get overexcited when, you know, Arsenal get certain results, or we start to blow the lead opens in the league and have a chance, and I starting to talk about, you know, how, you know, Arsenal have got this, blah 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 blah, and I kind of behave as if the league is easy, it's a cakewalk. In no way am I saying that. Like, you know, you look at some of these fixtures, you know, Crystal Palace hosted a Villa team that was chasing for the title. I'll give you a great example. Held them to a 0-0 draw. No points. Palace is a team that has been struggling, slipping. And yet, they still were able, you know, tough environment, Selhurst Park, to keep Villa out. You know, they could be a bugaboo for anybody. You know, Everton has had their days this year. Leeds has been on a string of really good results. You know, it took an absolute miracle from Newcastle. They had to, like, score 2 goals within, like, the 90th-ish minute and plus, like, 10 plus minutes afterwards as well, to turn a loss into a win. At one point, Leeds were 3-2 up. Aronson was looking freaking brilliant, and they looked like they were going to steal the points. You know, Calvert-Lewin been re-energized this season. They are a tough team now. They are proving it for more than the last quarter or so, maybe even starting to leak into a third of the season overall, being a pain in the ass and really being hard to beat. And, you know, well done to them. It shows you, it's just an illustration for how tough this league is. There's no easy teams in the league, and this is kind of like an example. 3 tiers from the bottom, and yet these are all tough outs. None of these are guaranteed 3 points, especially if you're going away. And with Leeds, you know, they're performing away from home as well now. They're making it tough for teams to be, like, think about it, this is the same Leeds team that when we played them at the Emirates, you know, we smacked them 5-0. Like, and look how they matured. It's crazy. They've really, really, you know, grown into their Premier League shoes. All right, next up. This is a reality check for Tottenham Hotspur. I have now taken a look at the Premier League table, by the way. Sunderland and Fulham, who are on this tier, right, have more points than Tottenham. Tottenham sit in 14th in the league. By the way, they were 17th last year. Like, seriously, Tottenham, you need to wake up. I get you got injuries. You gotten so desperate, you brought in Conor Gallagher to shore up that midfield. Richarlison's going to be out for a long time. You've spent poorly. Xavi Simons is not panned out at all like you planned. Kudus is now going to be out for an extended period of time. You know, Thomas Frank sitting there holding an Arsenal cup away at Bournemouth, and you, the way that game finished for them against Bournemouth, where SEMENYO, by the way, scored in 2 games since. Thank you very much, Tottenham, for fucking breathing life into Anton SEMENYO, who now switched to put on a City shirt and scored in both the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup, and I'm like, oh crap. But yeah, you gave him the exact parting gift. Boy, I was defending Thomas Frank for a while there, but this thing is starting to go pear-shaped for Spurs. I gotta tell ya. And Yeah, I got some Thomas Frank pressure coming up in a certain later video. It is actually insane. But for Sunderland and Fulham, top of the table, 30 plus points each. Look, I was just looking at it, right? Fulham, through 21 games, have 9 victories. That's enough for them to be 9th in the league. They've dropped points on 13 occasions. That's still more than 50%. Sunderland, on the other hand, have won only a third of their 21 games in our top 10. So I think it's another indication of how tough this league is. I think a lot of people will look at this and be like, oh, it's so easy to be top. No, it's showing you how many teams drop points in this league, that drop points are such a reoccurring occurrence because the league is so much harder that 9 wins gets you, through 21 games gets you in a 9th. 7 wins gets you into 10th. Like, Tottenham has got 7 wins. Like, again, but for Sunderland, it's just really crazy Jekyll and Hyde. Some of their recent performances, like, they get points against City, they get points against Spurs. They go away to the G-Tech, by the way. Big up Brentford. They get absolutely destroyed. That's some of the inconsistency that I'm talking about with some of these teams. It's also a little bit of a reality check for Sunderland. Like, they still aren't necessarily as quality as their league position says so. Now, AFCON has kicked some countries out. They will be getting players back. So I do expect for Sunderland to get better. On the other hand, Fulham, guys, quietly is the one on 31 points. The same amount of points as the Chelsea team that they just beat. As a Chelsea team that was once considered title contenders, Harry Wilson has blossomed into a star. I will not be surprised. By the way, former Liverpool Academy guy, he literally shipped off, couldn't quite make the cut there, and now he's becoming a talisman at Fulham. Now, do I think he's got some ways to develop? Yes, of course. I don't think I would be looking to make a move right away or in this January window or in this summer, but boy, he hasn't been linked at all. But I think this is a guy who, if he can maintain this type of form, is going to be sort of like one of those names like an Anton Semenyo or an Eze of the past, which other big clubs might be keeping an eye out for if he can maintain this form. Fulham overall, by the way, under Marco Silva, have been tremendous recently. Really, really flying under the radar have the Cottagers. Honestly, Tottenham, you are less consistent than both of these sides, and that is an absolute fact. So check yourself before you wreck yourself. Tottenham Hotspur, you are not a top 6 club. You are a bottom 10 club right now. Like you were Nottingham Forest is 17th. That's where you were last season. Just for clarification and to put things in perspective. Next up, goal rush. So these teams, for me, they're not front and center. I'm not tuning in to watch these teams play all the time. But there's the type of teams where Arsenal might not be playing. We're waiting for them to play later in the kickoff afterwards. They'll play in the goal rush, the 1 o'clock kickoff, and you see, oh, this team has scored and this team has scored. It's the idea behind this is in the NFL, I call teams that could be fun to watch, football nerdy stuff, but they're not on primetime TV. We call that red zone, right? It's the program that only shows you the touchdowns or brings you to a game when they're inside the 20, inside the red zone. That's what's called the red zones, and it shows all the games. But I'm not really paying attention to you or circling, oh, I can't wait to watch Bournemouth and Brighton. But when you do see them, you're like, damn, these are some exciting games. I mean, look at that Bournemouth performance against Tottenham. They came back, to win. I think they took the lead 3 times, I believe, in the game. Tottenham kept coming back, but they just, went ahead to win. Now, I think they're going to kind of lose that edge now that Semenyo is gone. I'm very interested to see what they look like, who kind of steps into those shoes. Krupi has been looking really good as of late. He scored another one against Spurs. Maybe he's the guy who, comes in and looks like Semenyo for them. I don't know. It's interesting to see where Bournemouth go from here now that penny has dropped, because are they going to start really falling down? Are they going to maintain that sort of consistency? Let's see. They lost Hoyson. They lost, what's his face? The guy who went to Liverpool. Come on. Kirkes, right? They lost a few other guys as well. I think they lost their keeper as well. They lost quite a few. But yeah, they still surprise everybody, but Semenyo was a big part of that. Let's see, without Semenyo, does somebody step up on their shoes? Is Iraola as good of a coach as I've been picking him up to be? This is the big test for him. Let's see if something comes into the window for them. But it's hard to kind of cultivate a player who's come through and created such a good chemistry and as a vibe with that fan base and with those players. You can't just sign somebody and you get Semenyo right away. Now, shit like that takes time. So I'm interested to see where that goes. Brighton, on the other hand, thank you so much for again, another team taking points off City. And then they went ahead and beat United in the Cup. Welbeck scoring a worldie of a free kick. Brighton on their day are also really excited. But again, I'm not tuning in unless they're playing one of the big boys to their games. And for Newcastle United, man, those games are fun to watch. I'm not going to lie. That Leeds game, I was talking about it earlier when we were talking about Leeds. That was drama o'clock. That late winner at the end by, I think who scored the winner again? Harvey Barnes, right? Great game. Great ball from Bruno, Bruno has been a low-key fun to watch. I don't think people give him enough credit for how much of a baller he is, And then, that was a really entertaining game. Honestly, that was more entertaining than most of the games on the weekend. It just doesn't have the implications that some of the others do. But again, these teams are fun teams to watch, right? They got good upside. They can be entertaining. But again, they're not the main snack, right? They're kind of like side dishes for me. Next up, back at the wheel. Now, I did make this title, just a bit of a spoiler alert, when I thought that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was going to Man United. But just interestingly enough, Michael Carrick now has become the manager at Manchester United. Michael Carrick also, by the way, if people don't remember, was an interim over, kind of like the way Darren Fletcher was. I believe after, was it Mourinho left? Was it Mourinho or was it Mourinho or Solskjaer? Anyway, there was some point where Michael Carrick was years ago. Now he's back. He's been given the caretaker manager's job till the end of the season. This is a big opportunity for Carrick. He had the Middlesbrough job. I actually didn't think he was that bad in that. They lost so many big players, in that, they did not do him any services. Right? So, interested to see. He's going to change the formation back to a 4-3-3. By the way, Fletcher already had done that. Sesko's starting to pick up form. I did kind of say that is a part of the equation that Man United's upside is. Now, the Ruben Amorim thing is gone. Maybe that gives him the freedom. I'm very interested to see, though. Again, the talent is there. Maybe the application can be a little bit better with Ruben out. We do not know what that was. I still wouldn't have sacked it. I've made that very clear. But let's see how they react. The first game without Ruben against Burnley, so far, with no wins without him since they've sacked him, right? Fletcher, over his two matches, drew with Burnley and lost to Brighton. So, knocked them out of the cup. They're trophyless this season. But, you know, I still back their overall talent. I still think there's an upside there. And if they can just play for a guy like Carrick, who could just reinstill to them what it means to be a Man United player, I think they just sort of need to just remember what their club is about. Let's see. Maybe they've got a sting in the tail for City. Like, we'll talk about this in another video. But that is a high pressure game, high pressure derby now for City right now. This is an inflection point in their season. And Man United would love nothing more than to, despite having their own turmoil, be able to be a speed bump for their rivals. I mean, what an opportunity there is for this Man United team. Again, so talented. By the way, some of the Ahmad and Mbumo, I think, is coming back. I think Mazraoui's still in, right? Morocco, but they're starting to get players back. They've now switched to a formation to get the best out of Bruno. It's so funny, by the way. You know, Amorim is gone, and all of a sudden these players that were injured, all of a sudden they're back and starting in the lineup, you know, for Darren Fletcher. Very interesting. But, you know, we're going to have to see. Sesko, again, I believe scores 3 goals now under Darren Fletcher. Interesting. Let's see what it looks like with Carrick now back at the wheel for Manchester United. Next up, David and Goliath. Fun fact. Brentford, by the way, again, I keep reminding myself, and again, it's just a humbler, have 2 more points than Chelsea and 2 less points than Liverpool. Brentford this season, after 21 games, have 10 wins, still less than half, but sits 5th in the Premier League table. Just for context. It's like, I'm just going to just pause a little bit to let that sink in for you. 5th. And Igor Thiago has been a revelation. The dude just can't stop scoring. They smashed up Sunderland 3-0 at home. Another 2 goals for Igor Thiago. What does that bring his tally up to, by the way? What's Igor Thiago's tally for goals overall in the Premier League? Let's see. Statistics. Because I think only Haaland is more than him in the league, right? 16 goals. That's actually crazy. So City have 2 of the top 10. Between Haaland and Semenyo this season, they're 30 goals. That's nuts. Yeah, that's crazy. And but anyway, Thiago though sits in between those 2 players at 16 goals this season. Like, they've been a problem, man. They've been consistent. I mean, ish. You know what's so crazy? Another less than 50% of your wins of your games have been wins. More, they've dropped points in more than 50% in 11 times out of 21, and yet they're still top 5. Like, there's a position right now where Brentford are in the UCL next year. Like, Liverpool similarly also have 10 wins in our top 4. To think about it, there are only 3 teams in the Premier League this season who have won more than 50% of their games. Arsenal, City, and Villa. Just to give you an idea, but it's crazy. Like, I think it's time to put a respect on Brentford's name. Unlike some of the other candidates who've kind of set up here and threatened to get to this point, i.e. Bournemouth, i.e. Sunderland, Crystal Palace at a point. We're in Matchweek 22 now. Brentford sit top 5. They got 10 double-digit wins in this season. I had them relegated at the start of the year. Still becoming my worst take of the year. Insane. And then the 2 Goliaths. Now, credit to Liverpool. You know, they're only the 2nd team this season to go to the Emirates and not be handed an L. And by the way, the only team that we've not scored again against this season, I thought, Liverpool, got to give it to them. Slot, he's been under a lot of pressure. His tactics were really good against Arsenal. He frustrated the life out of me. And, questions can be asked about the arse. But, well done to them. And then there's the Chelsea team, right? Maresca out, Rosinia in. I gotta say, Rosinia made some impressive subs when we played them both ways. These two teams both have played Arsenal in the last week. To different results. Neither of them have beaten us. But, Chelsea is a team that, for me, just feels like their season can go one of two ways right now. They could really just start to kick on and really just, get inspired behind this new gym teacher manager, behind Matisse. Or it could really go pear-shaped. I think a lot of the fans are very, very unhappy with the ownership at the moment. They just are. And look, a lot of them were screaming Maresca out, and then when Maresca was out, then they have a problem with the ownership. It's very interesting. There are people who, by the way, who are backing Maresca, and all of a sudden, now that Maresca's out, they're backing Clear Lake. I don't want to get into that because we're talking just about the way, the tiers are set up. But again, Man United had a better season by a point this year than Chelsea. Do I think Chelsea is more talented, has more upside to go this year? Again, this is how the tiers are based. Yes, which is why they are one tier above. Again, if Chelsea can just settle it down, which I think is in the cards, it's one of the, potential possibilities, they have a shot to be in the Champions League again next season. But I think it's a really important time now for them to sort of calm it down a little bit. Chill out, right? It's a big game this weekend. Brentford, who are on this tier, come to the bridge. This is a real chance for them to set out a landmark. Because look, what I've been saying, can Goliath knock off David? They should at home. This is an important game, right? Because you were just talking earlier about Forest and West Ham last week. This is a 6-pointer, Chelsea fans, whether you want to believe it or not. Yes, with Brentford. Brentford sit 2 points above you. Brentford beat you at the bridge. They would be 5 points ahead of Chelsea. But if you beat them at home, you go above Brentford, and now you're sitting kind of like in those UCL places around the top 5. So this is a huge game for me, for Chelsea Football Club, and for Brentford. Liverpool, on the other hand, they got Burnley at home, I believe. Has to be barbecue chicken. Has to be. Absolutely. All right, moving on up. Of course, the December champions. These two teams, everyone was saying, Arsenal, be so scared of them. Look how consistent. 7 wins in a row for Aston Villa. Emery is better than Arteta. They're going to come to the Emirates, and this is going to be really interesting and really funny. You guys aren't going to really have anywhere to hide. And then, of course, we slapped them up. City are now on the back of 3 straight games without victory. Right? This is an important moment in their season. Everyone thought, Arsenal were the vulnerable ones. Yep. Even though we were scrapping victories in December, they were still getting victories in December. And now, the lead has pushed out to 6. Now, we will discuss in a moment, of course, how it could have been bigger, and, that definitely does need to be discussed. But right now, this is a point in the season for these December champions to stay in the race. They really, really must pick up and stay on course with Arsenal. This week, for Man City, of course, they have a huge Manchester derby. I will discuss when we get to, under pressure, or as well, when we get to upset alert, the implications behind that, obviously. But this is a big time because, Arsenal will play Forest. We'll kind of know what we need to do. Everton have a home game against not Everton. Villa would play Everton at home. I think for me, if Villa want to kind of stick in it with Arsenal and City, especially with Arsenal, they're going to have to go ahead and win that game. So there's so many interesting combination of points and scenarios as you're going to see within this weekend, which I find this very juicy because City go up first. If City lose to United, Arsenal then play later that afternoon against Forest with a chance to maybe go 9 points up. United get a point, Arsenal get a second crack at the egg of going 8 points clear, right? But a City win means that, they pull within that 3-point gap, which for them is a magic number because they still play us at home, right? The pressure then is on Arsenal to win, right? If we don't win, if we lose, then it's a 3-point gap. Like, there's so many things, right? We win then, it's back up to 6, but with Villa, it would be a 9-point gap heading into their game against Everton. And if Villa, a team that I do not trust to make up a 9 or an 8-point gap, don't beat Everton to follow that up, they're not winning the title at all. They're out, right? Which, by the way, I never expect them to be in it. They are. Credit to them that they are in it with, 17 games to go. But then, we'll really see what they're about when they have both Arsenal and City having had their games out of the way, and then they have to know exactly what they need to do and see if they go ahead and do it. So I think it's going to be really interesting. And of course, at the top of the tiers, to end off the show, the front runners. Now, I'm disappointed with the fact that we could not take advantage of a golden opportunity that City gave to us to go 8 points clear at the top of the league. I honestly, the title for this tiers for Arsenal would have been a much different one. But what I would say now is it's time for us to be front runners, Time for us to revel in the fact that we are top, to have that comfortability. I think as long as right now I know people are going to try their hardest, the media especially, to try to, change the narrative and make it feel like Arsenal's still under pressure. But as long as it's a 6-point gap or more, even a 5-point gap or more, or a 4-point gap at one point, I think 4-point gap is a little bit like, I think that Chelsea game and us beating Bournemouth was huge. The 6-pointer for me is good. As long as it's 6 points right now and we're not dropping off, there should be no pressure. We need to go out there and express ourselves and play with freedom and enjoy the football. Arsenal have played since that Liverpool game, which we were able to create jack shit. In the cups now, 7 goals. Now, Portsmouth, I get it, but to go to the bridge, score 3, Victor Gyökeres is now scoring goals again, as I mentioned in my intro. Scoring and assisting and coming to life, like looking like a player that I've told everybody that he is, despite everyone just taking the cheese of, a player who's unconfident and having a hard start to his Arsenal career. But, he's looking confident now. I want to see how that translates into this Nottingham Forest game away from home. Arsenal are in the midst of a string of 4 straight games away from home, which, by the way, is our longest run of away games all year. So far, 2 from 2 with 7 goals combined. This Forest game is for me is the biggest of the 4 because there's Premier League points involved. Then you got Inter in the Champions League, but Arsenal are pretty, clear in the Champions League. But again, take advantage, keep that thing going, because when you're here and you're expressing yourself and you're just playing with freedom, man, every single time Arsenal win, it's going to make City in particularly that more and more anxious. You can see, by the way, breaking news, City are really throwing the bank at Gahey to try to get him to pick them. Fabrizio goes, Man City have advanced on Mark Gahey with big approach. So City are throwing money at this thing out of desperation. They've already got Semenyo. Credit to him, he's made an instant impact. But you know what's creating this sort of behavior, by the way, which I think is a bit irresponsible? It's desperate to try to buy a players available on a free at the end of the season and actually pay a transfer fee on top of the fact they're going to have to match the wages of teams that, of course, are looking to buy them on a free, so therefore they're willing to pay more money because they don't have to pay a transfer fee. So they're going to shell out a hell lot of dough just to try to keep up with Arsenal. Arsenal, just keep winning and frustrate them. You have them rattled. It's very, very obvious you have them rattled. They feel like they need to buy big just to keep up with you. So be front runners. You know, that's all it is. Go ahead, beat Forest. I'm really interested to see what happens in the Manchester derby because, you know, Semenyo, they scored 10 goals against Exeter at home. For me, whatever. I think it was a bit weird. Again, very weird behavior. Like, why you need to punch home 10 goals? Like, why are you on the gas pedal against a team that shit? Like, leagues below you at home? Like, very weird. You know, but then, you know, the Newcastle game was a very odd one, by the way. I think Newcastle had many chances to win. But I'm interested to see now, with Semenyo having scored in both those, how they look against a United team which is in transition. Very interesting games to come up this season. But guys, let me know what you guys think about my tiers list this week. Yeah, look, I think it's been sort of changing a lot, you know. By the way, it's been interesting because the rankings of the teams in terms of talent are also changing because it's the January window. So it's a very, you know, interesting time of the season, and the tiers are in constant rotation. But yeah, let me know, guys, what you think in the comments section below. If you made it this far into the video, it's been a 42-minute Anton's tiers. Crazy. Yeah, I just love to talk, don't I? Anyway, guys, thank you so much once again for tuning into Hotsport. Make sure you leave us a like and a comment and a subscription if you haven't already. And I'll see you guys later. Anton out.